Hello YouTube, it's William here with Copernicus Trains, and today we're doing something quite a bit different. Today I visited the National Railway Museum in Green Bay, Wisconsin, and this video is going to be detailing and chronicling my experiences, what it's like to visit the museum, their collection, and my thoughts on the whole thing. So I hope you enjoy. Alright, so jumping right in, right now these next couple shots are just going to show you the introductory areas of the museum. In addition to the gift shop, you have a few rooms displaying lots of railroad memorabilia, one of the most notable of which is their drumhead collection. This is right after you pay your admission. I believe it cost me somewhere between $11 and $14, I don't remember exactly, to get tickets to the museum, as well as the train ride that was included in the price of admission. This portion of the museum is very rich with lots of information, signs, interactive elements, displays, and a couple of other things. But without wasting too much time, we are about to get into what follows at the end of this hallway, and what is generally considered to be the hallmark of this museum, and the biggest reason why you should come and take a look at what they have. So here's the Lenfestey Center, and I'm just going to let the view speak for itself. This room houses the museum's most impressively restored and most impressive items, ranging all the way from a big boy, a Gresley A4, and a GG1 to something as simple as a little 040 tank engine. Let me just say that stepping into this room for the first time is not an experience I'm likely to forget soon. This is my second time visiting the museum, and entering this room still took my breath away. The stature of the engines within, the cleanliness of the facilities, the way everything is lit and set up, is just breathtaking. Not to mention, there's so much incredibly cool stuff to see inside, and since a lot of the COVID restrictions had been lifted, this area was a lot more interactive than my first visit, and I found myself enjoying it even more than before. Their collection in here is very well restored, very well maintained, and very impressive. And in just a minute, we're going to go through all of the items in this room one by one. Starting from the left, we have Gresley A4 Pacific number 60008, the Dwight D. Eisenhower. The black, gold, and green finish is really stunning on this engine, and it's actually one of my new favorites in the collection. Being my first British engine that I've ever seen up close and in person, I was thoroughly impressed by the design. It's still far from my favorite streamlined engine and far from my favorite engine overall, but I was pleasantly surprised by how much I enjoyed seeing it and how much I enjoyed experiencing the interactive elements that this consist had to offer. Right now, you're about to see one of my favorite things about this engine being on display. It's the fact that they actually let you in the cab. This is a common theme with the Railroad Museum here in Green Bay, and I'll discuss it more in depth later. The view up here is really incredible, and this was actually my first time being inside the cab of a steam locomotive. Even though this one wasn't operating, it was still quite a sight. It left a lasting impression, and fun fact, it was not my last for the day, as you'll be seeing shortly. I couldn't help but take a few photos, so I set up my self-timer, and here is me sitting in what I assume would be the engineer's position. Not exactly the most dignified thing ever, but I was alone, and so I had to make do. After leaving the cab, the striking green paint scheme on that tender is, up close and personal, but this time you are finally able to enter the cars behind the engine. Last time I was here, these were closed off due to further refurbishment and COVID restrictions, and the car directly behind the engine seems to have a new coat of primer on it, so I assume they're doing further restoration work in here. This was really cool, as I'd never been inside a British coach of any sort, and to see the sleeper car behind the engine was very cool. I'm not sure, there's me anyways, but I'm not sure if this is exactly the one, or if both of these cars are the subject of this story, but if you've seen the Unlucky Tug's recent video about the Flying Scotsman's USA tour, if you haven't, I strongly recommend checking it out. He details the story of how these coaches got here. They were donated to the museum during the USA tour by the Flying Scotsman, essentially. Here's the little shower area in the car. And yeah, overall I was just super impressed by how up close and personal they let you get. I mean, this isn't a guided tour. You can just freely walk through just about everything. The fact that the museum was almost entirely empty on the day I arrived meant that I was free to explore at my own pace, to really soak everything in around me. After I filmed these clips, and you get a quick look at the big boy from the window there, but after I filmed these clips, I had plenty of time to put my phone away and go back through and experience them truly in person and not just through the lens of my camera. Overall, even just this first train was an incredibly cool experience because it showed me something that I had never seen before and likely won't get the opportunity to see anywhere else. So if you're a fan of British steam here in the US, be sure to come check this thing out. And you're about to see my favorite picture from the day. This is myself in the cab of the A4. Another visitor at the museum helped me take these pictures, so if by some miracle you're watching, I really appreciate it. Now, I sort of recorded these clips in the order that they followed as I walked around the main building. This is an A&W Caboose, and of course they let you check out the interior. This was the first time I've ever been inside a Caboose, and it was pretty cool. Again, in really great shape. So this is just one of the smaller items, but it's still equally impressive. Here we have their little 040 in here that I was speaking about earlier. I didn't really stop to check this thing out as much as I had to be back outside in order to catch the train ride at 2 o'clock. But now for the main attraction, the Union Pacific Big Boy number 4017. This is probably the reason why most of you know that this museum exists, and I have to say, it is most certainly not a disappointment. This is the first and only Big Boy that I have seen in person. Hopefully I'll be able to see 4014 operating at some point, but the restoration on this engine is absolutely gorgeous. The paint looks phenomenal. The way they have it all lighted up through the frame is incredibly cool to see, and they have a lot of fantastic information about the engine on display. Those little placards all around the engine contain various information about roller bearings, running gear, operating schedules, and such. It's difficult to explain just how massive this engine is to anyone who hasn't seen one in person, because even the vision that I had built up in my head about how large one of these things just did not compare to actually physically standing in the presence of one. If you're in the area and you haven't seen a Big Boy yet, this thing is worth it for the trip alone. And the fun with the thing doesn't stop there. I'm sure you can guess what that staircase is for, given the other exhibits that you've seen so far, but you can venture up into the cab, and so here we go. This is another one of the most impressive features of the Big Boy. Of all the cabs that I saw that day, this one was the most insanely complex. They also give you a chance to see inside the firebox, which we'll discuss in just a minute, as well as the coal bunker of the tender. Now, you get another really fantastic view of not just the Dwight D. Eisenhower, but also the GG1, and seeing this really made me appreciate just how difficult it must be for the crews of 4014 and other similar engines must have had it. This is the engineer's seat, and the number of levers and dials and things to keep track of is just amazing. So we're stepping back out real quick just to check out the coal bunker, and this is like massive, seriously. Like, I can imagine the engine could run for an incredibly long time on just that load. But here we have the view out the engineer's window, as well as some of the controls. You can see the Gressley coaches. And now we're taking a look at the inside of the firebox. This is with my flashlight on, and you can see that it's illuminating next to nothing in there. And that's purely because of the sheer size of the firebox. It's difficult to convey on a video, but it's absolutely massive. These pictures are, of course, me taking a seat in the cab, just enjoying the engineer's seat, which was, again, extremely cool to experience. Next to the Big Boy, they've got a snowplow, as well as this little steamer here, this U.S. Army Consolidation number 101, which I'll talk about more in a second. Right up against the Big Boy. I didn't read a lot on this engine, so I don't know exactly what the history is or the story is or how it got here. It was very cool to see, but it's not really the type of steam locomotive that I specialize in or really pay a lot of attention to, so I'm sorry. If you want more information, that just gives you another reason to go and actually check it out. Very cool to see. I do wish I'd taken a bit more time with it to stop and read about it and learn some more. If you really want to, if your pause game is great, you can check that out. But anyways, next, the really other big attraction in the room. PRR GG1 number 4890. As with everything else in the general area, this thing is one of the cleanest restorations I've ever seen. They really do take good care of these things. What you just saw there is the pantograph, and this is standing on the deck of the big boy's cab. That pantograph reaches almost all the way to the ceiling, and the ceiling is incredibly tall. This was also my first GG1 that I've seen in person. Unfortunately, living in Wisconsin, I don't tend to get out to Pennsylvania that much. But, again, incredibly cool that you can actually go up and take a look inside the cab. For obvious reasons, they don't actually let you inside of this one, and you're right up alongside of the big boy. But, gives you an idea of just how cramped these crew quarters were. I kind of stuck my phone in the window here to get these up-close shots, just so you could see. And, in just a moment, I'll show you the engineer's view out the front of the cab, so pretty cramped. A friend of mine really hates that it has those massive vents on the front of it. They say it ruins the look of the GG1s. I agree they're chunky and cumbersome, but I don't hate them. That's all I have to say on the GG1, because now we're checking out the Pullman Porter exhibit. And this impressed me a lot too, as this wasn't open the last time I was here, neither was the big boy or A4 cab. But this was my first time being inside a Pullman car, and this view right here made me stop for a moment because, wow. The ceiling in here is indescribably high compared to, how the coach looks from the outside. It really does give quite the feeling of luxury, which is evidently what Pullmans were known for. The sleeper cars in here, the way everything is set up, it's so well preserved. And of course, be sure to respect the museum and the stock inside when you visit. Do not sit on the beds or anything. There's signs everywhere, of course, reminding you not to. But yeah, just seeing this was incredibly cool. And for those who are into this sort of thing, this exhibit features a lot of the race-based stuff surrounding the Pullman porters and their sacrifices and injustices. I didn't stop to read a lot of it because, again, I was on a pretty tight schedule with having to make the train ride. But yeah, you're gonna see me in the mirror again. Hello. But anyways, this was also incredibly cool to see. My first time being inside a true Pullman car, and the restoration on this one is absolutely phenomenal. Gorgeous interior, gorgeous exterior. It looks great in that hall alongside those giants of steam. This was another really cool site kind of behind everything and near the back end of the big boy, but this is a Burlington route dynamometer car. I'd never seen the interior of one of these, but I was surprised at how well furnished and comfortable this thing looked. Behind me are all of the instruments for the dynamometer car that would have measured, just about anything on any given train. This section is, covered in plexiglass for obvious reasons, very fragile equipment. And the rest of the car is open for walkthrough, however, and it really opened my eyes to what it would have looked like for the crews on these cars. It's impressive how much they were able to cram into such a small space. They don't let you in that little side room there. The crew stove is very cool. But yeah, a lot of the stuff, almost all of the stuff in this main room here is accessible by any regular guest. Here I am, not only checking out the Snowplow, but looking inside of a Milwaukee Road Caboose. This one is also very, very cool. Wooden caboose. It's got the cupola or cupola or whatever the heck you want to call it up top. Don't come at me in the comments. I know I'm pronouncing it wrong. Got the crew stove and seating areas and things, and it's just a gorgeous restoration and a gorgeous car. That was looking out over the back deck. And we're going to give a couple more sweeping panorama shots of the interior, the building, to give you guys an idea of what it would have looked like. I seriously can't get over this. I could have spent hours in here if I had the time. However, at this point in the filming, it was almost 2 o'clock, and so it was time for me to head outside for my train ride. So that's what we're going to discuss next. Alright, and so here we are outside at the depot. On my visit, it was closed for refurbishment. It's primarily for younger children. It's like a Discovery Depot thing. And so they had a Canadian National MP15 pulling the consist today. It was a single open-air excursion car and a Reading Company coach. Now, I don't know a lot about their diesel equipment, but I believe on other days they are running a Green Bay and Western SW something, but don't quote me on that. This is some video footage that I took while we were waiting to depart. The train ride was supposed to depart the station at 2 o'clock, however they had a couple of technical difficulties with the MP15. This is a video of the startup, so hopefully you can hear the, startup in the background. Basically what had happened is some air had gotten into the water lines and the governor was stuck in place, so they could not start the engine and they couldn't get it moving. It took them about an extra 4 minutes to fix up the problem, and we were on our way. I was very pleased with how they kept everyone on the train very well informed about what was going on, and they still managed to depart only 4 minutes behind schedule, so they got everyone the train ride in with no real major changes to anyone's schedule. The train ride is very simple, but it's also a lot of fun. It's about a 30-minute journey that takes you around the museum's loop of track 2 times, and one of the museum's volunteers narrates over the loudspeaker system. Now, unfortunately, due to COVID precautions, the coach in the rear of the train was not accessible to us at the time, and it was limited to just the open-air excursion car. However, this didn't detract from the experience whatsoever. I was planning on sitting here anyways, and it was an absolutely beautiful day outside. We did have some issues with, I think it might have been the brakes squealing on the car, but those resolved themselves very quickly. In this shot, I was trying to show you guys their other switcher, but it's in an off-limits area and pretty difficult to see. Anyways, the loop is simple and it's very short, but there are some great sights along the line, and I strongly recommend it if you're going to the museum. I would say that you can skip out on it if you really don't have time or you really don't want to sit through the 30-minute presentation, but it is very cool to see. You get to see 1 or 2 extra pieces of unique rolling stock, and you learn quite a bit more about the museum if you do take the train ride. For instance, I wouldn't have known about the observation tower that you'll see at the end of this video without it. Now, while these scenic shots of smaller parts of the loop pass us by, I want to take just a minute to talk about my experience so far at the museum. I found the interior facilities to be extremely clean and very, very well maintained. While the Green Bay Railroad Museum doesn't necessarily have the largest collection of equipment out there, they take very, very good care of just about everything they have. In addition, the interactivity of all of their exhibits is unmatched for me in terms of preservation, as I've only ever really been to the IRM otherwise, but comparing the National Railroad Museum to the IRM reveals a significant discrepancy in how much you can truly interact with the locomotives they have on display here and there. Just about every engine that had a cosmetic restoration that was safe for guests to be inside, you could access the cab. The walkways inside the outdoor shed, which we'll be talking about shortly, are very well maintained, and a lot of their equipment is in great shape, as you'll see later. Anything that isn't is on the table or slated for restoration or currently undergoing restoration. During the train ride and walking around, I could audibly hear people in the shed working next to the engine shed. I don't know what it's really called, but I could audibly hear them working on stuff. It's very cool to see, and there's always something going on around here that you can take a look at. So while it doesn't necessarily happen as fast as some other places, they are always growing and they are always, restoring their stock, which is very, very cool to see. So I didn't record too much on the second lap, but they stopped and talked about some hobo culture at that boxcar that I showed you guys previously. Here's a closer look at the engine after hopping off of our little train ride. And overall I was very impressed. I didn't expect to enjoy it as much as I did, and I'm really glad I decided to go for the train ride. They offered 2 train rides the day I was here. They offered a 2 o'clock and 4 o'clock run. So now we're taking a look at some outside stuff. I was told that those passenger cars there are usually open for display. However, they need further restoration, and as such, for the safety of guests, they're closed off. Now on to one of my favorite parts of the museum is the outdoor shed. This honestly reminds me a lot of Barn 9 at IRM, a dinky little handcar, but this is where you're going to find a lot more of their steam engines. This building isn't in as good of shape as a lot of the interior buildings, but the stuff in it is quite impressive. Like, for example, right now you're looking at the Rock Island Aero train. Personally, I think it's one of the ugliest diesels ever conceived, but that's just me, and it's very cool to see here on display. They have 2 of the cars that go with it, and it gets talked about quite a bit. Right now you're looking at some more of their rolling stock that's in the shed, and at the time I didn't know this, but those were actually open for display. This is a really good shot of 2736, their C&O Kana, which is also in impressively good shape compared to a lot of the others that I've seen pictures of anyways, and the one at the IRM. Same with this Union Pacific Dome car. That one was also open on the interior. Now this is Santa Fe 5017, and it's one of my favorite engines that they have here. Fun fact about it, and you'll get to see quite a bit more of it in just a minute, that engine is the engine that the current profile picture of my channel, as well as my profile picture of just about any social media account, was taken on. That photo is of me sitting on the main rod of the locomotive. I know, scandalous, don't tell anybody, but that was from my first visit. You just got to see one of my favorite views in the museum, and it's turning around on the outside of the shed as you get to see some really impressive stuff. Now we are heading into the open sections of the cars, and honestly I wasn't expecting it to be this impressive. You have an RPO car, I believe this one's Burlington if I'm remembering correctly. I'm sure you'll recognize that main rod from my channel logo. But anyways, this was the RPO car from Burlington. I didn't show it very well, but they had a mailbag and catch stand outside. Now we're venturing into the Union Pacific Vista Dome car, and this was super cool for me as it was my first time ever going inside a Vista Dome. Climbing up the stairs, you're greeted with the Vista Dome interior itself, and this was incredibly cool for the first time. The windows were a bit dusty, so it's a little difficult to see out of, but just wow. For my first experience being in a Vista Dome car, this was pretty cool. A lot of the seats in here needed reupholstering, as you'll see in just a minute, so I don't recommend sitting down, or sitting down on anything really, cough cough. But yeah, so this is like the kitchen area, I guess, underneath the Vista Dome itself, which is also super cool to see. I love that they have this open, I love that you can go into it, stand in it, and experience it. But yeah. This car wasn't in the best shape, nor is the Great Northern Sleeper that you're about to see, but these three are all connected, and as a single string of walk-through coaches, this is incredibly cool. I'll say it a million times, but the interactivity of these exhibits is just so far beyond what I'm used to seeing for facilities like this. It really does make the experience special, and even though it's not guided or it's not spectacularly elaborate, the fact that they let you see these things up close and personal, that you can stand in it and feel all the aspects of it, is something that I don't really see a lot of places doing, and it's a shame because this is honestly one of my favorite parts of the museum, is getting to do stuff like this. Anyways, now we're hopping down, and I might have accidentally thrown another clip in here of me inside the... Yeah, this is the inside of the Vista Dome car again. But, anyways, we're going to talk more in depth about the other steamers. So this is that 210-4, I think it was. Right there, that main rod is where my channel logo came from. And once again, you're going to get to see one of my favorite views in the entire museum. Stepping out here and seeing those three gorgeous steamers all lined up. On the far left of that lineup, you have the Lake Superior and Ishpeming 280, another one that has survived. This one's number 24. And on the right, a Sioux Line 462, and I don't remember the number on this one. You'll probably see it in just a moment. This one's also incredibly cool to see. The LS&I consolidation gives me a good idea of what number, I think it was 14, coming to Colebrookdale is going to look like, which is super cool. I know it's not the same class specifically, but it's really cool to see. Here's an LS&I Railway Express agency car. I'm surprised they don't have it behind the engine. Some sort of geared locomotive on a flat car. This one I didn't stop to look at much. You can read that if you really want to. But again, just walking through this is super cool. It's not as big or as elaborate as IRM's Barn 9, I would say, but the way they have everything on display and the interactivity of everything just surpasses anything else I've seen so far. Two switchers, there's Great Northern number 11 and that Milwaukee Road unit back there, I forgot to catch the number on it, as well as a Chicago Northwestern bi-level. Here you're getting a first glimpse of the DM and IR 210-2 that they have here, and this one's an odd unit. I don't remember exactly what railroad it is. It's a Baldwin. I think if I'm remembering correctly, it's a 282 Mikado, number 102. But yeah, this one is one of the first engines you see when you come outside. And again, super cool. Their collection of steam power is not as massive as some other places. They do take really good care of it, and it all looks fantastic. So number 506, this DM&IR 2102 is incredibly cool to see up close and in person. I really like the paint scheme on it. The cosmetics are still in pretty good shape. I think it could use a good dusting off, just like most of everything else in here, but I really cannot complain. Stepping up onto the walkway, which you'll see in just a minute, it's that wooden pathway that kind of goes between the engines there. Stepping up, you're greeted with a fantastic view of everything in that general area, number 102 and the 210-2, and another cab experience. So you can step inside the cab of number 506 and enjoy that, and I most certainly did. Honestly, for as many times as I got to go inside of the cabs of assorted steam engines today, it never got old. Each one was like a completely different and totally new experience. You have an open coal bunker on this one again, and in a minute you're probably going to see some photos of me sitting in the engine. Pretty good views up here, and yeah, just again, impressive to see. Yep, there I am, aviator sunglasses. Thinks he's cool, probably isn't, but yeah. Stepping back down, we can continue down the lineup. Here's the placard for 506 if you'd like to read that. Impressively sized engine, and it looks great too, but another really good overall view of the shed gives you an idea of the scale and space of the unit. They've got a lot of the lights on the engines as well, which is, again, super cool to see. A little bit further down, you'll run into the tender and eventually the rest of the Chesapeake and Ohio Kanawha that they have here. Again, compared to the one that I've seen at IRM, if I'm remembering correctly, this one is in impressively good shape by comparison, number 2736. This one you are not allowed inside the cab of, but I tried to give you guys a little glimpse anyways. Again, really cool to see. I know there's a lot of 284s out there, but to see one that's in this shape and looks this good is still a treat. And if it's not really your thing, just walk on by. It's a sweet locomotive, in great shape, missing a few things like the headlight and a few of the number boards. But yeah, this was my first encounter with a good condition Kanawha, and it really gives me an appreciation for the restoration efforts that are going on with these engines. Now we're between that LS&I coach combine, I think it's a combine, and Santa Fe number 5017. And if I'm being perfectly honest, the cab on this engine probably impressed me the most out of anything behind the big boy. Not only because I really like seeing this engine, given that I really love the photos that I've taken with it, but the sheer size and maneuverability in here, and again, the number of dials and controls. This one was probably the most comfortable cab that I'd been in all day. It had seating for 4 individuals, it had heating underneath the seats, steam heating as standard, huge coal bunker, lots of maneuverability throughout the cab. And the controls were spaced in a way that really made sense. It was very accessible. And this is coming from somebody who's never operated a steam engine, but I was very impressed by how cool it felt just to sit up there. Stepping back down, we're going to take a couple of our final looks at the museum's equipment. We're walking down the side of the boiler. And as we're running out of time, as we're starting to come to the close of the video, I just want to give my final thoughts on the place. You're about to see some photos of me in the cab of that 210-4, by the way. I seriously enjoyed my time here. I spent probably close to 3 hours at the museum getting this footage, and then just walking through and experiencing everything again, and it was truly wonderful. Like I've said time and time again, the interactivity of these engines and these exhibits is far beyond anything else that I've experienced, and I really enjoyed it. Not to mention their collection, while it's smaller than some other organizations, is very impressive and very well maintained. So if you like seeing stuff in great condition, if you like stepping inside the cab and starting to learn a little bit more about these things, not only is the place very informative, but the campus is very well put together. And as a final treat, this is the top of the observation deck that they have built. Gives you a great view of the campus, and I thought it was a great way to close off this video. So with a final sweeping look at the Fox River, everyone, if you get the chance, come out and check this place out. It's really sweet. The people here are very kind, very receptive, and their collection is super impressive. And so that's going to be it for today. I want to thank you guys so much for watching. I want to thank the National Railroad Museum for presenting such a wonderful experience. Please rate, comment, and subscribe below, and stay tuned for more model railroading content here at Gopernopper's Trains.